If the core messages of Gnosticism and Catharism are true, and the Egyptian and Tibetan books of the dead are correct, then we are all living within a reincarnation soul trap matrix from which very few escape. If the reports from many near-death experiencers can be trusted, then we are being expertly coerced, manipulated, and sometimes forced against our will to come back here after death. And if Robert Monroe was right, then Earth is a giant loosh farm, with human suffering and other negative emotions being the main crop harvested. This bleak outlook, painted by these various sources, is also echoed in many world religions. For example, the iconic image of the Bhava Chakra, or Wheel of Life, in Buddhism, depicts all of human life happening within the jowls and grips of Yama, the Lord of Death. 4 concentric circles show how we are trapped within a reincarnation cycle. The pig, rooster, and snake in the inner circle represent the 3 poisons: ignorance, attachment, and aversion. These 3 poisons give rise to positive and negative actions, which result in the light and dark karmic manifestations shown in the 2nd circle. Karma then gives rise to the 6 realms of suffering depicted in the 3rd circle. And finally, the 4th circle symbolizes the 12 links of dependent origination, showing how the poisons, karma, and suffering all cause inevitable reincarnation. Importantly, also shown in the picture is the moon, which represents liberation from the reincarnation cycle, and Buddha pointing to the moon, which indicates that our liberation is possible. The Hindu religion also maintains that we are trapped within a reincarnation cycle created by the god Brahma. The Vedas describe this world, our bodies, and all of physical creation as Maya, meaning a trick or an illusion created by Brahma. Within each of us exists an Atman, or soul essence, which discards and acquires new bodies the same way we throw away old and buy new clothes. In this view, the physical world perceived by the senses is actually the greatest obstacle separating us from true reality, and the goal of human life is to achieve moksha, or kavalya, meaning emancipation or liberation from the cycle of birth and death. Even the 3 Abrahamic religions of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam are sending a similar, albeit more cryptic version of this message. They don't feature reincarnation or claim physical reality to be illusory, but do view Earth as a fallen realm, and not the kind of paradise one would truly wish to inhabit. Humans are viewed as inherently sinful beings, and Earth serves as a kind of mediocre purgatory for our souls, not nearly as good as heaven, and not nearly as bad as hell. Depending on our beliefs and/or works during this life, we are judged, and if positively so, our souls ascend to a heavenly afterlife, never to return here again. One commonality found in all of these religions is the notion that we are imperfect souls trapped in an imperfect realm, but with the ability to escape and transcend to something somewhere better. Earth is never presented as our true home or the best place to be, but rather as a temporary prison or school where we must first purge our sins or karma. Arthur Schopenhauer stated in On the Suffering of the World, "If you want a safe compass to guide you through life, and to banish all doubt as to the right way of looking at it, you cannot do better than accustom yourself to regard this world as a penitentiary, a sort of penal colony." I refer not to my own philosophy alone, but to the wisdom of all ages, as expressed in Brahmanism and Buddhism, and in the sayings of Greek philosophers like Empedocles and Pythagoras, as also by Cicero in his remark that the wise men of old used to teach that we came into this world to pay the penalty of crime committed in another state of existence, a doctrine which formed part of the initiation into the mysteries. And Vanini, whom his contemporaries burned, finding that an easier task than to confute him, puts the same thing in a very forcible way. Man, he says, is so full of every kind of misery that, were it not repugnant to the Christian religion, I should venture to affirm that if evil spirits exist at all, they have posed in human form and are now atoning for their crimes. And true Christianity, using the word in its right sense, also regards our existence as the consequence of sin and error. So if this world truly is a penitentiary, a sort of penal colony, then how do we break out of this prison? If there is a better place to be, or a better state of existence to experience, how do we achieve it? If we wish to be free from suffering, free from all falsehoods and illusions, free from sin, karma, and repeated reincarnations, how can we truly be liberated? The majority of modern Christians would be satisfied to say it is as simple as believing wholeheartedly in the divinity of Jesus Christ. But as previously established, beliefs may be used as a weapon of manipulation against us in the afterlife realm, and this gamble, known as Pascal's wager, has potential downsides unforeseen by Pascal or most Christians. Likewise, most modern Buddhists and Hindus would answer that we should conduct our lives in a way that creates no new negative karma. But as previously established, this is deemed nearly impossible, and even the most diligent disciples are doomed to suffer thousands of deaths and reincarnations. Interestingly, if instead we look to the words of the Buddha himself in the Buddha Vachana, he states, "You may declare for yourself that I am done with hell, with the animal realm, and with the sphere of afflicted spirits, finished with the plane of misery, the bad destination, the lower world. I am a stream enterer, no longer subject to rebirth in the lower world, fixed in destiny, heading for enlightenment." In other words, he is saying what is really necessary for us to transcend this soul trap is true intention and conviction. It would seem the most important aspect of avoiding reincarnation is having the clear intention and solid conviction against it. It makes sense that karma, material desires, and attachments would play a part in luring us back into body. But if our intention never to return is strong enough, it should outweigh any material desires or attachments trying to bring us back. In addition to this, something else that would seem incredibly important is having full faith and complete confidence in our own innate authority. Almost every near-death experience involves some kind of angel, demon, god, alien, spirit guide, deceased relative, or other light being appearing and introducing itself as an afterlife authority figure. Why should we believe or trust in the imposed authority taken and information given by these beings? If and when I find myself in a mysterious new afterlife realm, I would much rather travel to and fro, learning things on my own, than be led around and lectured by an appointed tour guide. I would rather trust my own instincts and intuition, remaining skeptical and suspicious of new people and places. Blindly believing strangers isn't advised in this life, and isn't something that sounds advantageous in the afterlife. Many near-death experiences also feature a life review and judgment scene presided over by these beings, as explained in the Egyptian and Tibetan books of the dead. Most people report just passively watching the entire life review and accepting whatever judgments were made about them. But why should we accept the judgments of anyone outside ourselves? Why should we even agree to watching a life review with these judgmental beings? Why not instead opt for polite non-compliance? If a being wants to be your afterlife tour guide, just respectfully decline the offer. If the being starts giving you unsolicited information about the afterlife realm, just nod, smile, and remain skeptical. If they want to watch your life review with you, again, politely decline and see what happens. If these beings are as benevolent as they attempt to appear, your respectful refusal of their requests shouldn't be a problem. The whole trick seems predicated on the fact that these entities need our consent to send us back into body. They can shapeshift and appear as our most influential authority figures, lie about anything they need to persuade and manipulate us, watch playbacks of our entire lives, choosing key moments to guilt and shame us for, then encourage us to reincarnate to right the wrongs we supposedly committed in this life. But if they could simply force us to reincarnate, why would they bother with all the pretense? It seems the ultimate choice is ours alone. They can attempt to guilt trip or shame us into coming back. They can try to entice or bribe us with better incarnations. But if our intention is set and our conviction strong enough, what are they going to do about it? Decide that you are never reincarnating, regardless of what anyone says. Make the decision that no outside entity has the right to judge you. Reject their offers of life review. Refuse their demands and directives. Remain skeptical of their claims. Maintain your sovereignty and deny their imposed authority. Set your intent on ultimate truth and let everything false fall away. Howdy Mikowski wrote, "One of the things many NDEs present is that the beings we encounter claim to have some sort of an authority over us, and that one should be in both fear and awe of them. This is likely the main reason one is programmed since birth to respect authority and to never question it. You don't discuss or deal with these entities. You must be rooted in your divine spark. You go past them by dissolving them, and as such, seeing that everything they are and present are manipulated lies, that they have no authority over anything that comes from outside the matrix. Those who allow such judgment to take place are abdicating their own authority. We have to drop the idea that anyone or anything is above us or has the authority to judge us. Only the divine spark within can do that, and the divine spark never judges." And Isabella Green wrote, "Know that you have a different choice. Decide on your choice while still alive. Make a strong agreement with yourself. Stand your ground. No one yields any power over your decisions for yourself. No matter how mighty that authority might seem to you, you do not need any authority to give you permission. This is very important for you to know. Own your power to decide and execute your choices for yourself in all areas of your experience, and you will be sovereign and free." Another aspect of the near-death experience often reported is being presented with something called a soul contract. After an archonic light being appears and introduces itself as your personal afterlife tour guide, you may be led to the Akashic records or to a council of elders and shown a contract that you allegedly agreed to and signed. These soul contracts are then offered up as evidence to prove that whatever has happened or will happen to you during your many incarnations on Earth was already contractually agreed upon. For example, from the Near-Death Experience Research Foundation, Matt S. said, "I was made aware that there were things that I had contracted to do that were still undone, which was confirmation to me of reincarnation and contractual incarnation, that we pick our lives." Chantal L. remembers being made to feel like a failure for not accomplishing her contracted life mission. She stated, "We ask to be born, and we enter into a contract. We come to Earth with a purpose. On the other side, it is all that matters. Did we accomplish that mission or not?" This insistence that we have some important, incomplete life mission is one of the main reasons cited for being sent back into body after a near-death experience. Chantal and others report that everyone signs these contracts before being born, and in them are key people, places, events, and missions to be included in your life script. Rachel E. said, "We enter a contract with God, and the terms and conditions include difficulties, challenges, and definite hardships. That is the experience we all signed up for." Thinking critically about this for a moment raises some serious questions. If the terms and conditions for incarnating on Earth include difficulties, challenges, and definite hardships, along with ambiguous missions to complete during our lifetimes, and the penalty for anything short of absolute perfection is hundreds or thousands of forced reincarnations and memory wipes, who in their right mind would sign such a contract? If our memories are erased before each incarnation, how and why should we trust or believe that we even signed such contracts in the first place? I certainly don't remember anything that happened before I was born, so if somebody claims that I signed a contract in the spirit world, how can they prove it to me? Even if they somehow showed video of my disembodied soul entering a contract, why should I believe it? Contracts are only lawful when signed by both parties with due process, given full disclosure, not under duress, and without any misrepresentation, fraud, or unconscionable terms. If a signatory lacks the capacity or fails to understand the full scope of the contract, or if the terms of the contract are so one-sided unfair, or oppressive that they shock the conscience, all of these are lawful reasons for termination. When it comes to these soul contracts, I find it hard to believe that we are given full disclosure and understand the full scope. I would actually argue that everyone lacks the capacity to understand what they are originally signing up for, because that first contract would have to be agreed upon before ever incarnating here. How can anyone have the capacity to fully understand what it means to agree to repeated reincarnations into a realm they have never experienced? Furthermore, the terms of these contracts are most certainly one-sided, unfair, oppressive, and shocking to the conscience. Contractually obligating a spirit that has never experienced life on Earth to suffer and die repeated reincarnations until they complete a perfect lifetime free from any sins or negative karma is both unreasonable and unconscionable. Howdy Makowski wrote, "Some unique near-death experiences have discussed seeing symbolic rooms that held billions of soul contracts. Of course, like any valid contract, they must have been signed in good faith and without manipulation or deception. And that is what must be seen about these so-called soul contracts. No matter how these beings try to enforce these agreements, they are not valid due to the many layers of deception, lies, and pressure put into them. As such, they are all null and void. It is all just a Westworld-type backstory that is placed in the soul's unconscious to explain the pain and suffering one will experience in life. The contracts are as fictional as everything else in the Matrix. They will only exist because we have been tricked to believe them." Wayne Bush wrote, "According to a guest I interviewed who met the demiurge, we all signed a contract. Some other near-death experiencers mention it too. I'm sure that is one of their biggest ploys. One thing I wondered about, though, is those who say they adamantly refused to come back to Earth, but were sent back against their will anyway. Now we can't know for sure what really happened other than what they say, but if the Archons need our consent or agreement, then how do we explain those? Maybe that's why some near-death experiencers say we make contracts and agreements before coming into our lives, and the Archons use those, if unfulfilled, and they can always find one thing we didn't do or fulfill, to send us back. I think the contracts expire at our death, but just in case a promise extends past death, we need to revoke these contracts. They will surely use guilt and shaming tactics to get you to renegotiate. They will show you highlights of a life that looks enticing, but just remember the pain and suffering that can be endured. Don't let them manipulate you. You sin the second you are born and consume other life. You can never not sin and be born into a body. You will not be allowed to remember all of the soul contracts that you have made, but you can revoke them, since you are a sovereign being, a divine spark of God, and were duped into making them. This is another reason we must be careful about praying to any entity outside of ourselves. If we spend our lifetimes praying to something or someone else, whether for protection, to grant our wishes, or any other reason, then that puts us in its debt. These shape-shifting astral beings, or the demiurge itself, could leverage our prayers against us in the afterlife, insisting we now owed them. Any entity that claimed to be the one who answered our prayers would possess significant power over us. They could then guilt us into reciprocation through some sort of contract being fulfilled. For this reason, it is crucial while we are still alive to intentionally and adamantly revoke any and all soul contracts. I recommend creating a personalized contract termination ceremony where you write and then verbalize your revocation aloud. For example, you could recite, "I am a sovereign being. No entity has any authority over me but myself. I hereby revoke any and all previous soul contracts or agreements. I have no memory of entering into any such contracts or agreements, but suspect I may have intentionally had my memories erased before incarnation. If it is ever claimed that I willingly entered into a contract, but then subsequently had my memory erased, that would constitute fraud, misrepresentation, and violate the necessity of full disclosure. It is impossible to convince me that I would ever consent to a complete memory wipe, which makes any contractual obligation after such a process null and void. Furthermore, any prayers, wishes, or requests that I have made throughout my lifetime to God or any other entity are not to have any consequences or strings attached for being granted. If I was assisted and my prayers answered, I give my honest and sincere gratitude, but refuse to accept any imposed contracts or agreements as a result. I am solely in charge of my soul's destiny and decisions. I declare all previous contracts and agreements made with all beings in all dimensions obsolete. Lastly, the revocation of soul contracts and agreements must extend to any made during this lifetime as well. Many friends, family, or lovers make vows and promises to each other which may prevent them from ever leaving the reincarnation cycle. For instance, people will often swear to come back for you in the next life, or promise to be together for all eternity. And these are exactly the kind of memories brought up during the life review to guilt and shame us into reincarnating. We must be careful not to make these kinds of statements while on our deathbeds or during such intense emotional moments. We may promise to love people for as long as we live, but once we die, all bets should be off so that our souls may remain unbound and free. Isabella Green wrote, "If you plan to get out of the reincarnation cycle, I recommend having closure with family and love connections before you are ready to pass. This does not mean to stop loving them while you are still alive. On the contrary, love with all your might, right there and then, but pay attention not to make any promises to come back for a loved one, or to follow them across time and incarnations. If such vows have already been made, take steps to revoke these vows, and to release yourself in your heart from any such promises. Complete your love agreements within the lifetime you consider or want to be your final incarnation on earth. Be ready to depart with a clear heart that cannot be either guilted or seduced." Whether it is the Christian notion of Judgment Day, the Hindu and Buddhist concept of karmic reincarnations, the afterlife trials and tribulations of the Egyptian and Tibetan books of the dead, or the personalized life reviews encountered by near-death experiencers, the idea that we are ultimately made accountable and judged for the actions taken during our lifetimes is nearly ubiquitous. On the surface, it seems fair and just that people's bad deeds be penalized and good deeds rewarded with such a system. But what if the punishments really don't fit the crimes? Spending eternity in a lake of hellfire, having your astral body dismembered and eaten by archons, or being condemned to suffer and die thousands of reincarnations on earth, all seem like rather harsh penalties. Whether you were the worst psychopathic murderer, or you just hurt someone's feelings one time, the purpose of the life review seems to be about finding any and all instances of regrettable or shameful actions taken during our lifetimes, making us feel guilty about committing them, then getting us to consent to being punished for them. Similar to soul contracts or entering the white light, it appears the archons need our willing permission to punish us, and the life review is their manipulative method of gaining consent. By having us relive our rock bottoms and re-experience the most negative choices made in our lives, they are purposely putting us into an emotionally vulnerable state. Once we are sufficiently ashamed of ourselves and made to feel guilty for every infraction, they then present our punishment in the form of an opportunity. In order to right the wrongs of our lives and to hopefully do better next time, we are offered to be reborn. What if we refuse that offer? What if we disagree with whatever punishment we are served in the afterlife? Will you just accept whatever God, Jesus, angels, archons, great-grandma, or whoever judges you decides? Shouldn't you have a say in the matter? Or more than just a say, shouldn't you be the ultimate arbiter of your own fate? Why should we willingly grant such authority over us to any outside entity? Why even consent to watching a life review with these judgmental beings? If we are sovereign spirits with our own conscience and moral compass, surely we can recognize and repent for our wrong actions without someone else forcing us. If we are brutally honest with ourselves and perform our own in-depth life reviews before we die, There should be no need to subject ourselves to a judge and jury like some criminal. This practice is called recapitulation, and is another key tool in helping transcend the soul trap. Howdy Mikowski wrote, "One of the main things most claim to have experienced in their near-death experiences is a life review. This is really not about going over one's life so the person can see how they lived and thus learn and grow. What this review is really about is that the beings the soul will meet, archons in some kind of disguise as a karmic council, beings of light, or something projecting authority, scanning through one's human life to highlight all the moments of guilt and shame they can. Even young children receive a life review. Who doesn't have past moments you wish would have been done differently? Those feelings easily get manipulated to trick us to coming back here. Of course, we are humans placed in this world with no memory of anything, no guidebook on how to live, and we have our lives manipulated by these control beings. As such, the practice of recapitulation is vital. It is not just to clean your energy or reintegrate yourself from past experiences while alive. Those are secondary gains. The recapitulation is meant to prepare you properly for that after-death review, to know your past inside and out. Nothing can be thrown at us as a surprise. We want to be able to say to everything shown, "Yes, I know about that. It was a challenge, or I was under some stress. I have seen the event myself, and have come to better understand who I was then, and why I acted that way. I am okay with all that now, and I am no longer that person." A proper recapitulation should begin by acquiring a large new journal and writing down the names of every single person you have ever known. Anyone you have ever interacted with, beyond superficially, should be included. Even if you don't know their names, write down what you can remember about them. Think back to every year of your life since childhood, one by one, and list every person you interacted with, from friends, family, and neighbors, to teachers, coaches, and co-workers. Once you have finally compiled a complete list, which will likely be extensive and overwhelming, first just sit and meditate on one person at a time, remembering every major interaction that carried any emotional weight throughout each year of your relationship. Focus specifically on negative, regrettable, or shameful behaviors on your part, and write down each incident with as much detail as you can recall. Be objective and honest about your shortcomings, what you did wrong, what you should have done, and how you have changed or will be changing as a result of the realizations. The entire recapitulation may take weeks or months to finish and shouldn't be rushed. The point is to recognize and repent for our sins now, rather than waiting to be blindsided by them during an after-death life review. By owning our mistakes, taking accountability for our actions, and working through the associated emotions stirred up during the process, not only do we achieve personal growth and development, but by taking responsibility now and making steps to improve, we fortify our future selves against any emotional manipulation by archons trying to guilt or shame us during a life review. If we have already objectively analyzed our actions, sincerely repented for our failings, and made positive changes as a result of our realizations, what purpose would further punishment serve? If we have already performed our own recapitulations, shown contrition for our crimes, bettered our behavior, and refined our character, we should move beyond the need for judgment or discipline from outside entities. Isabella Green wrote, "Guilt-tripping souls into taking more incarnations on Earth and pressing the idea of not good enough is the mechanism heavily utilized by the handlers. Earth's population has been deliberately conditioned into a state of unworthiness for generations, so this mechanism of convincing works like a charm. From the inception of the human race, in all belief structures, we have been trained to believe that we are secondary to the gods, regardless of the form these gods took. Humans were conditioned to believe that other beings were more powerful or knew better for us than we did for ourselves. This kept humans subservient and obedient to the ones who handled them. This is the mechanism that, to this very day, makes most people trust and follow suggestions received from any supernatural apparition that they might encounter. The same conditioned default behavior kicks in once we face the angelic-looking beings telling us to return to Earth. This default behavior is something to be aware of and watch out for. Those who lived their entire lives with a sense of unworthiness, constantly reinforced from all directions in our present-day reality, those who did not manage to overcome this conditioning before passing, will be especially vulnerable to the guilting and convincing techniques reincarnation cycle keepers use. Remember not to fall for any of the tactics they employ, namely guilt-tripping, love-trapping, triggering your unworthiness, suggesting a bigger purpose, or even offering attractive scenarios for your next lifetime. Know to the very core of your being that these are just the tactics to keep you in the cycle, and don't buy into any of it. Own your choices here and now. This will help you to release the guilt. Start living consciously. Be a good person in service to others as much as you are able. Forgive yourself when it is not possible, so that there are no regrets and no guilt at the bottom of your heart that the handlers could tap into and guilt-trip you into returning. To the best of your ability, release all of the not good enough programming. Unworthiness is the key factor that makes the tactics of the handlers so effective. Do not buy into the pressure that you are not good enough in this lifetime and need to go back to do better. If there is any aspect of our beings able to survive physical death and live on in other realms or dimensions, it is undoubtedly our consciousness. Consciousness is our internal world of awareness, thoughts, emotions, sensations, perceptions, and choices. It is the I we experience as I am, and the sense of self inside us that has never changed since childhood. As philosopher Malcolm Hollick wrote, events are experienced by an experiencer, thoughts are thought by a thinker, pain is felt by a feeler, imaginings are created by an imaginer, and choices are made by a chooser. This is consciousness, our inner witness, the only part of ourselves capable of existing outside a physical body, and thus the most important part of ourselves to train and develop for transcending the soul trap. Some key practices for exercising and expanding our consciousness, which should assist us in the afterlife, include meditation and mindfulness, astral projection or out-of-body experiences, shamanic plant medicines, and lucid dreaming. To begin with, meditation and mindfulness are practices of inner stillness, maintaining awareness of the present moment, paying attention to thoughts, feelings, and bodily sensations without judgment or rumination. There are many methods of formal meditation, including focusing on mandalas, chanting mantras, or pranic breathing, all of which work towards cultivating mindfulness, being fully engaged yet non-reactive, accepting whatever arises in the moment, and not getting caught up in past regrets or future anxieties. By fostering deep introspection and clarity, helping us become more aware of our egos, desires, and fears, we can better recognize the illusions, attachments, and karmic patterns that may bind us to the material plane. The inner peace and power gained from meditation can also reduce our need for external validation, weaken the influence of outside entities trying to control us, and strengthen our resolve for spiritual sovereignty. With a calm, focused, meditative mindset, we can more easily access our higher intuition, and thus better navigate challenging situations like those faced at death. Beyond simple meditation and mindfulness techniques, another more mystical and esoteric practice recommended for helping transcend the soul trap is astral projection, also known as the out-of-body experience. Astral projection is the ability to separate oneself from the physical body while remaining fully conscious and perceptive. Such out-of-body experiences often occur spontaneously during deep sleep, anesthesia, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, extreme illness, or trauma, but can also be purposely induced through practicing certain meditation techniques. The experience usually begins by surprisingly finding yourself sitting, standing, or floating next to your physical body. Your dormant physical body remains seated in meditation, lying down on the bed, or wherever you left it, but your consciousness moves to a point outside of it, still perceiving everything normally, but with a new feeling of lightness and power. You may have a ghostly astral body that looks similar to your physical body, or you may be a point of pure consciousness that can travel anywhere at the speed of thought. With practice, the experience can be repeated at will, and has been scientifically verified through remote viewing. As covered in my book Spiritual Science, expert remote viewers in formal Princeton and Stanford experiments have repeatedly accurately reported seeing objects, people, and events in far-off locations, behind locked doors, or in sealed vaults by projecting their consciousness out of body. Many books have been written explaining how to astral project, two of the foremost authors on the subject being Robert Monroe and Robert Bruce. I recommend reading their books and found them helpful, but have personally been unable to induce an out-of-body experience myself using their methods. During a magic mushroom trip, however, I once experienced momentarily looking down on my body from a point high above, which was absolutely surreal and paradigm-shifting. Being able to perceive, think, and feel while floating outside your physical body provides genuine experiential knowledge of life beyond the physical. The more comfortable and confident we can become with this separation of consciousness from our physical form while still alive, the more prepared we will be for the permanent separation at death. With practice, when your final day arrives, the process of leaving your body will be familiar to you. Experienced astral projectors also mention travels to other realms beyond the material plane, and meetings with light beings, much like those recounted by near-death experiencers. By navigating these realms and learning to interact with these entities now, we become better prepared for what to expect and how to handle them in the afterlife. As Robert Monroe stated, "I no longer merely believe in survival of death or an immortal soul. I know that I will survive death. I have directly experienced being alive and conscious without this physical body. Therefore, I know that I possess some kind of soul that will survive bodily death." The ingestion of certain shamanic plant medicines like ayahuasca, DMT, or magic mushrooms are also used to facilitate out-of-body experiences, visits to the spirit world, and encounters with other dimensional beings. The altered states of consciousness accessed under the influence of such substances parallel near-death experiences in many ways, and can be a useful tool to train ourselves for the inevitable transition out of body. These parallels caused Dr. Rick Strassman to dub DMT the spirit molecule because of the mystical and spiritual experiences reported by those in his clinical trials. Many of his patients felt themselves lift out of their physical form, entered tunnels of light, heard celestial music, encountered angels or beings of light, felt absolute peace and painlessness, and were reluctant to come back into their bodies. Most reported a lessened fear of death, with patients saying things like, "I rest in the comfort of knowing my soul is eternal and my consciousness endless." The DMT sessions gave me the gift of truly subjectively knowing the phenomenon described in the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Another patient said, "I knew I was going through the first bardo of death, that I had been here many times before, and it was okay. I no longer fear death." Thus, having some acquaintance with these altered states of consciousness and successfully navigating them while still alive can certainly help better prepare us for our physical demise. Lastly, lucid dreaming, or the practice of becoming fully conscious and controlling our dreams, is another useful tool for those attempting to transcend the soul trap. Altered states of consciousness, like those experienced during out-of-body experiences and near-death experiences, are very dreamlike, and without practice, the opportunity to assert ourselves while in such a state may pass us by. If, however, we develop the skill of lucid dreaming, it is much more likely that we will be able to stay aware, alert, and assertive in situations where we might otherwise be passive or unaware. Dream states are also full of symbolic imagery, illusions, and deceptive entities, similar to what many report in near-death experiences, so lucid dreaming should help us better navigate the afterlife with clarity and purpose. It provides a proving grounds for interacting with dream characters and testing their authenticity, giving us a safe environment for developing our discernment to identify and reject any astral trickery. There are several methods to becoming lucid during our dreams, with the first, most important, being a dream journal. Keep a journal and pen or pencil right next to your bed at night, so whenever you wake up from a dream in the morning or in the middle of the night, you can immediately jot down every detail you can recall. This simple act of writing down everything you remember about your dreams instantly upon awakening is the quickest and easiest way to work towards becoming lucid. By training our minds to recollect intricate details from our dreams right after they finish, the level of dream awareness begins ramping up, and the process becomes so ingrained that eventually, at some point, rather than remembering after the fact, we recognize while still asleep that we are dreaming. When this first happens to someone, often the shock and excitement is so overwhelming that they wake up anyway. So if you do become lucid, try to remain calm, focus on sensory details of the things present in the dream, and say to yourself things like, "I'm dreaming now. I'm in control. I can do anything." With practice, you should be able to take control of the dream and do whatever you want. Beyond a dream journal, another method for becoming lucid is doing reality checks throughout the day during your waking life. A basic reality check is simply asking yourself several times every day, "Am I dreaming right now?" At first, this seems like a ridiculous waste of time, because every time you ask the question, you can immediately answer, "No, I'm awake right now, of course." But once this routine becomes habitual, eventually you'll be walking around one day and ask, "Am I dreaming right now?" only to realize that actually this time you really are asleep and dreaming. One recommended reality check that has personally worked for me is touching door frames when walking into a new room. Every time you walk through a doorway, touch the door frame on either side and say to yourself, "I'm awake now." Once this becomes habit, you'll eventually touch a dream door frame one day and realize you're not awake this time. There are also lucid dream masks you can purchase which use timers and movement sensors to determine when you're entering REM sleep. They then flash a soft red light through the mask, which infiltrates and colors the environment of your current dream, alerting you to the fact that you're dreaming. Through training these techniques like lucid dreaming, astral projection, and mindfulness, by familiarizing ourselves with altered states of consciousness, and by increasing our ability to remain alert, aware, and assertive in such situations, we should become better equipped and able to transcend the soul trap.